cheeky cup of coffee. So, I want to talk about my peculiar weekend. Just a bit of transparency, a bit of honesty, what I want to do with the podcast, and so a little bit of purchase of the week as well. So over the weekend, I was supposed to be going to AEW All In, and I got to the bus station basically, and I had a serious anxiety attack. I'm not 100% sure why. There is many spiderweb rooted reasons why I could have possibly had this anxiety attack. I'm not going to blame it on one thing, but I had an anxiety attack. So basically, my wife told me to get myself home. Said, look, at the end of the day, yes, you could be there watching it from the nosebleeds, or you could be watching it in the living room with your children and her. And the funny thing about it is, I'm not going to lie, I wish I was there to see Saraya pick up that women's championship, because that was a British Bulldog, Bret Hart moment. That was actually bigger, fundamentally, when it comes down to it, because Saraya is the ultimate British wrestler. So I wish I was there for that moment, but I would have been in the nosebleeds. I would have been so far back, I wouldn't have even seen it in that sense. But the thing about it is, I got to watch it with my children. I got to experience a moment with Vicky, with the biggest moment, I think, in modern wrestling history, with Vicky. And John and Lydia and Robin, they all stayed up and watched it. Personally, I think the best match the whole entire night was the Acclaimed versus the House of Black. It was so good seeing Billy Gunn win the trios titles with the Acclaimed, because that is something that is very, very, very special in a lot of ways. Because Billy Gunn, he's got to be pushing his 60s. And he was a legend of my generation, the Attitude Era of professional wrestling. So it was super exciting. No, I wasn't there. Yes, I did have a ticket. But I got to experience everything with my children. And I think there was one of the reasons was it was so far away from home. I live in Middlesbrough. And I kind of, after the show, didn't really have anywhere to go for about 6 or 7 hours. It's like, for example, I said to my mate Rob that I'll be up at Impact Wrestling in Newcastle. And he said, do you think the same will happen or something like that? We had this kind, and I said, no, because the thing about it is, if the show finished at 10 o'clock, I can get a train straight home. And I live 45 minutes away in that element. So Impact Wrestling won't be a Pacific issue in that element. So I will be 100% definitely there in that way. But it's a serious thing, man. When you feel like that, you've got to walk away from a situation, you've got to deal with it in whatever matter, you've got to deal with it. But I am not anxiety. My name is Adam. Okay, I don't live by fucking labels or anything like that. So that was kind of my peculiar weekend. But my wife was absolutely great through the whole entire weekend. Absolute legend in that sense. I watched Emergence yesterday, and Impact Wrestling, I'm not going to do a review of it because I wasn't in a headspace to do it yesterday. I was going to, but I decided not to. I ended up going out with my sister and brother-in-law and their kids and my family. We went out to, I don't know, I think it was Wynyard Play, whatever it is. It's like an outdoor thing. And if you know me very well, apart from professional wrestling and toy collecting, I am massive on the outdoors. Absolute massive. I enjoy being outside more than anything in the whole entire world. I enjoy climbing trees, the highest tree possible. I enjoy jumping gaps. I enjoy just woodland play, and I got to do that with the kids yesterday, and it sort of sorted my brain out. So I'm in a lot more cheerful and happy mood today, in a lot of ways. So I'm glad of that. And but yeah, it is what it is. Life, you need to wake up in the morning. You need to get over shit, because the continuation of you reliving and rethinking stuff, it just fucks with your head. And I've learned over a long time just sort of like to try to get over it. Some things you can't get over, some things that eat up at you, but you've got to try your best to sort of push forward. Absolutely push forward. But yeah, I want to talk about the podcast. I want to talk about the YouTube. I am going to be doing the YouTube. I am going to be going back to my original format. So when I first started doing little podcasts and YouTube and stuff like that, I ventured into everything. I ventured into politics. I like a bit of politics. I ventured into sort of like mindfulness, which I like a bit of mindfulness. I like a bit of chill. I ventured into doing pop culture. Massive. That's my thing fundamentally when it comes down to it. and I messaged into pro wrestling. And the problem is, what I've always tried to do is I've always tried to please everybody and do what everybody wants in a lot of ways. So the YouTube is going to have 2 shows a week. It is going to have a Wednesday show where I'm going to talk comic books. I am going to talk purchases of the week. And I'm going to talk about any movies I've watched in the week. I've been kind of inspired lately by the Joe Mays podcast with Joe Shoes and his mate. And they do this really, really solid podcast on pop culture. And it's probably my favourite podcast currently. So that's what I will be doing on a Wednesday. And don't worry, if you watch it, if you don't watch it, it's not a big deal. But I will be continuing doing my Impact Wrestling review show weekly and pay-per-views from this Friday. Because for me, that wrestling promotion is the best in the business currently. Look, back when I was a kid, it's all about the ECW, all right? Great wrestling, great choreographed violence, great storylines, even though it's slightly insane sometimes. But Impact Wrestling is my number 1 show, and I will be doing that weekly. I'm going to be cutting down my wrestling watching as well, so I will probably be only watching Impact Wrestling from now on. Because it takes a lot of time up, takes a lot of mental concept of social medias. I've also taken myself off of Twitter because of a crazy addiction towards Twitter, or X or whatever the code. So I have replaced it fundamentally, but I'm not going to be posting as much. So I'm going to be working with Instagram probably more and Threads if I'm going to do anything social. But yeah, that's it. But yeah, listen, let's talk about purchases of the week. Or purchase of the month, fundamentally. So, I have rules with what I purchase. I will buy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff that I specifically like and enjoy and have nostalgic viewpoints of and memories of. And I buy wrestling, anything that gives me nostalgia, or anything probably to do with the Major Pod as well, because I enjoy what they produce. I also grew up really having the Bendies more than the Hasbros and stuff like that, so I collect them as well. I'll grab one. I'm not buying loose boxy or whatever, but what we're going to do first is I've got 2 purchases of the week that are over here, but we're going to talk about what I've bought over the month in a lot of ways, because hardly ever any of it hasn't come, because some of it's come from the USA, some of it's on pre-order for like for about 8 weeks or something like that. I haven't spent loads of money, but I've spent enough money in a lot of ways, and maybe a little bit more than I usually do. But let's talk about it. So my favourite app in the world is the Shopify app, or the Shop app. And you see Mr. Beast and guys like that promoting this all the time. But the app, all in all, keeps me up to date with what I'm spending and keeps me up to date with what I've actually purchased. So let's have a look through this. So, and I'll tell you what I'm waiting for as well, interestingly enough. So my pre-orders this month, simple, very, very simple actually. So I missed out. So when Ric Flair had his last ever match, the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, the Bendies, they released a bunch of Bendies of Ric Flair. And they are re-releasing, but you couldn't get it. It was like exclusive to that event. But they've re-released the Ric Flair with blood all over his face. And it's him in that amazing, incredible white gear and that purple top that he wore on that night. And I'm super excited about that, because me saying that I'm an ECW fan, I was also a Ric Flair fan. And if you ask anybody, he's on my Mount Rushmore. I think he's on everybody's Mount Rushmore, but he's definitely, because I have some different choices to a lot of other people in a lot of ways, but he's definitely number 2 on my Mount Rushmore. And the reason why he is because there is no debate. He could entertain, he could do promos, he could tell stories, and he could wrestle. There's not many wrestlers that could ever do that. And that was the pre-order I made earlier in the month, and I was super excited about this pre-order because I think this is possibly going to be my favourite figure of the year. Possibly. I've also ordered the Joe Shoes. Now, Joe Shoes, he's an interesting guy. He's an ex-wrestler. He is also a great pop culture podcaster, and he's also become like a cult and internet champion of the major wrestling figure podcast in a lot of ways, the people's champion. And he's just basically this insane toyetic, as they would call it back there, guy that dresses in sort of like flowery shirts and sort of like a seaman's hat, and he has a hose pipe around him. This is the pictation of his picture. And it's just a super exciting sort of like figure, really. I love any sort of like bendies. I mean, Beauty and the Beast, Dalmatians, flipping the Star Wars ones, all of them, love them all. But this bendy, not the Bendums, okay, is probably going to be prime on my shelf because I think he's just such a great little cult guy. People follow him, people love him, and he's got a great flipping pop culture podcast. I think it's probably my favourite after Kevin Smith's. What else have I pre-ordered? So I also ordered, okay, my pre-order first. I think it's the Blue Jay store, the VSK trading card. And the reason why I pre-ordered this is because I missed out on the Joe Shoes trading card and I was flipping gutted. I was missed out by literally an hour or so and they were all gone because he's literally a ledge. So I wanted the VSK one, professional wrestler, great little wrestler, highly talented, pretty much done all the promotions. He's an indie guy in that sense, but got him really excited. But the thing that I'm really excited for, I have ordered and I'm waiting for to come now. Oh, I've also got one more pre-order off this. Is I'm gonna collect the Extreme series, the ECW based action line of major bendies, and I'm only going to collect the bloodied ones though. So I've got these 4 bendies that are coming. That is Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Raven, and Sabu. 4 of wrestlers that I would count in my top 20 wrestlers of all time. I am so excited about when this gets shipped because these are not like all my bendies, all my bendums are out of box, but these will not be coming out because Tommy Dreamer is literally my if I could meet a wrestler currently right now, it's only Tommy Dreamer. Only Tommy Dreamer. I hope I don't see the thing about it is I didn't buy the 360 ticket, I just bought the cheap one at the back. I hope I could bump into Tommy Dreamer and get this figure signed. If I could do that, that would be the greatest moment of my whole entire life. And any Tommy Dreamer ever listens to this, I hope that could be the case because he's literally, as a kid, I wanted to be Tommy Dreamer. Even in WWE, I wanted to be Tommy Dreamer. Impact Wrestling, I wanted to be Tommy Dreamer. He's the guy that I see on the screen and I'm buzzed about. But Raven's also a legend because it sounds really daft out of this. I had this weird style as a kid. I used to dress half like Fred Durst, half like Raven. It was really, really weird. All of his time periods from TNA, WWE, ECW, WCW, all of them. And Sandman's a bloody legend, so Sabu. So I'm excited about this series. I've also got 2 t-shirts coming. They are Joe Shoes t-shirts. Kind of needed to cheer myself up, so I bought something. But that's like through the month. There's been other little bits and bobs, nothing much. Trading cards in Maine. But as I said to you at the beginning, my rules are really, really weird. So when it comes to buying toys and trading cards and stuff like that, if I see a moment that I enjoy that will remind me, I will buy it. So for example, the Johnny Manziel trading cards that I bought a few weeks back, I really enjoyed the documentary. And I know a lot of people are giving it abuse, but I'm not an American, so I don't know all the situations that happened. But I remember the situation happening because it was over the news, it was over sort of sports magazines, it was over the Twitters and the Instagrams and stuff like that. So I remember it happening. So I bought it as sort of like them cards to kind of remember them in that sense. But I also have a viewpoint of I will only buy I'm not a completist in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm not going to be, and I refuse to be. I buy figures that I specifically am attracted to and I like. So the Super Sevens, for some reason, have been dropping in B&M, and the annoying thing about my B&M, I'm in a few groups, and a lot of the other BMs, they keep them in the flipping boxes. Like they have like a box and they have a sleeve, then there's the main box. And my B&M just rip everything fucking off, which is a fucking piss take, really, to be fair. But I've got 3 or 4 of them of bad guys. So I collect mutants and I collect the bad guys in Maine. I have got turtles, but I like the bad guys. You know what they say, sort of like about in that sense. Bad guys like bad guys. So I grabbed myself this week. I've got three of them already. I grabbed myself a Slash turtle. And I think this is my favourite Super 7 turtle in the Turtle series. This cost 20 quid. This was a decent thing. He's the evil the turtle from Dimension X. Great character. Amazing turtle. Amazing box from Super 7 as usual. Absolutely brilliant. And they work with Nickelodeon on this series. I love the box. Everything about it. This is probably my purchase of the month. So buzzed about this. And then the BSTs, and I know they get a lot of abuse. They're like the BSTs. The best way to explain BST is they do a lot of heavy metal rock toys and stuff like that, but they also do like branded like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. And I personally see them as an in between what Playmates offer and what maybe NECA offers, maybe an in betweeny. And this Casey Jones has been he's been peg warming, as CM Punk would say, peg warming, as Cadone and Myers will say, okay, at my local B&M, maybe for 8 weeks, and I wasn't willing to spend the money on the price that they were asking for it at the time period, but it dropped down to £8. So I got myself one of these Casey Joneses, and this will go straight on my Turtle shelf. Turtles for me is purely nostalgic. Me and my boy John have been watching all the films recently, and it makes me happy. It makes me cheerful. So yeah, that's this week. There's a bit of sort of like explaining why I didn't go to AEW All In, because I put out that little video on YouTube. There was also this week. There's also what I'm going to be doing, and then there's a little bit of purchases all in this episode. But listen to me. What my plan is I want to do less but well, and that is the idea. And I don't want, and as I said, I've removed myself from Twitter. I'm going to be on Instagram, on Threads solely, okay? And I'm also going to be on Twitch solely. So I'm going to be using them 3 platforms. I'm staying away from things like Twitter because it's not good for my mental health. It's just not good for my mental health. I get too obsessed with it. I think that's the thing. It's not even like it affects me. I'm just obsessed with it. I'm constantly scrolling. But yeah, guys, I love you. I love you all. I really, really do. And I will see you on Friday because I'm going for a nice little trek tomorrow. So I'm not going to be doing it. This is supposed to be Wednesday episode. So you listen to me. Scholesy out, and I love you lots. Thank you for your support.